Hello, chums. Now, what you're seeing here is actually one of the big disadvantages of filming using a webcam and natural light. As you can see, I am a little bit bleached out. But considering I'm recording this at 11:25 on a Monday morning, there's not a huge amount I can do about that. But let's just get on with it, shall we? Alright. Now then, anybody who's living in Britain, it has probably not escaped your notice that there is a general election coming up later on this week, the 12th, Thursday. Now, this is important. If you are over 18 and you've registered to vote, you need to do it. Full stop. And if you are quite happy with the way the country is going right now, with Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson, because that's his real name, as Prime Minister. Now, this is the same so-called politician that sends his dad, yes, his dad, to make his excuses on live TV. And from there, his dad then just basically insults everybody for daring to question his son. A man who cannot turn up to the same show as all the other political leaders in this country. They all turned up to be interviewed by Andrew Neil, who is, pretty hardcore political journalist. Johnson can't even be bothered to turn up for that. He goes for soft targets. He calls Muslim women letterboxing. He talks about black people as being, and I quote, pickaninnies with watermelon smiles. Do we really want that man representing our country on the international stage? I mean, it's all very well you think, oh no, I will vote Conservative to troll everybody. Don't. If you're going to do that, stay at home or spoil your paper. Because if you're going to do that, it's people like you that make sure this sort of government happens again. So don't. If you want to change, tactical voting. If you really can't think, right, I'm looking at these other parties and I can't decide who to vote for because they're all as bad as each other, and to a certain extent the leaders certainly are, what you got to do is look at the policies. Go to the party's website. Go to the website of your local MP, because really that's who we're voting for. We are voting for our local MP, and they will represent us in Parliament. And if you want to go over with your local MP, once they're in, you can arrange to go to one of their surgeries, or you can email them, or write to them, or contact them on Facebook, or Twitter, or whatever. They are accountable to you because you give them their jobs. And then you trust them to do the job you've put them in there to do. That's the way our country works. So that's England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. That's how these things work for us. We're not voting for Boris Johnson. We're not voting for Jeremy Corbyn. We're not voting for Joe Swinson or whoever. We are voting for our local MP. Right? That's how it works. And the leader of the party with the most seats, as long as they get more than 325, gets to form the next government. Right? So, let's say, for example, Party A manages to win 320 seats. They have the largest share of Parliament, but they ain't got 326. So, they cannot form a government on their own. Let's say Party B gets 310 seats, but then they do a deal with the parties that have the rest of the seats between them to form a government to get past that 326. They then basically go to the Queen and say, look, we've got enough to make a government here. This one wants to be Prime Minister. We've got a potential cabinet sorted out. Let's get stuck in. That's what happens. You have then what's called a hung parliament. And that's what we ended up with a few years ago when we had the coalition, which was the Tories and the Lib Dems, in which, actually looking back on it, it looks like the Lib Dems did manage to pin back some of the worst excesses of the Tory government. Because when they got kicked out, this is where we've ended up today. And, well, if you're sick of hearing Boris Johnson banging on and on and on about Brexit, now, on Thursday you can stop it. You want rid of him? Which, to be honest, we all do. We really... to be absolutely right about it, even if you like him as a leader, just look at the cabinet. Jacob Rees-Mogg. Ugh. What a nasty piece of work he is. Mark Francois. Michael Fabricant. All that lot. Nasty. Vicious. Racist scum. If you vote Tory, that's who you're putting in. Seriously, that's what you're going to be getting. If you want that, alright. If that's alright with you, okay. But don't then start moaning if they start basically bleeding this country dry. And by the way, do you know why this whole Brexit stuff kicked off when it did? It's because at the end of January 2020, European rules are being changed to close up loopholes in tax legislation. Those loopholes currently allow the likes of Rees-Mogg and David Cameron and Boris Johnson to store money, huge amounts of money, overseas in places like Seychelles, where they're not going to get taxed on it, etc. Now, what these European laws will do is require them to disclose these bolt holes they've got the money in, so they can be taxed on it. That is why the push for Brexit started in 2016. They knew this was coming. They knew that to protect their money, they needed to do something about it. It's not about taking our country back or anything like that. It's about keeping their wallets filled. Pure and simple. And as for the vote, I mean, come on. Look at how many of the Vote Leave campaigning, top campaigners have ended up being charged with various criminal offences. Yeah? All this stuff about Cambridge Analytica and all that. All the stuff from Russia. It was a flawed vote. So, at the very least, what's wrong with voting for a party, and there's two that are offering this, that are saying, look, we recognise that a lot of people voted to get out of Europe, but we also recognise that a lot of people didn't. 48% of the vote didn't. There was a 4% majority. That's it. 4%. And going by anecdotal evidence at the time, some of that, at least, was made, some of that 4% majority was made up of people who just wanted to stick it to David Cameron and didn't think they were going to win. I mean, hell, Johnson didn't think he was going to win. He was literally half an hour from throwing in the towel. He was preparing his concession speech when the result came through. That's why he vanished on a bender for a few days to maybe a couple of weeks after the result. It was like, oh shit, I've won. What the hell do I do now? So yeah, if we want to get Brexit done, don't vote Tory. Vote for either the Lib Dems or Labour, depending on who's got the best chance of beating the Tories in your seat. Because with that, what we'll get is a party that will actually put into place a confirmatory referendum, right? We're not looking at overturning it. What we're saying is, okay, based on what we know now, based on what we know from these last 3 years, do you still want to leave Europe? In which case, what will happen is we can go with this deal that has been negotiated and jobs are good 'un. Or you could go with the Tories, who want to crash out with no deals being made and will then sell likes of the NHS to the lowest bidder. To the highest bidder. Which will mean prescription prices will skyrocket because the American drug companies want to get into the market. And if you honestly believe that Boris Johnson He's trustworthy. I've got a bridge I can sell you. Oh yeah, and I've also got a tower in Paris that I need to get rid of. Scrap value. And I'll sell it for scrap value. Boris Johnson has lied. I mean, for one thing, by now, why isn't he lying dead in a ditch? He said he was going to. Where's that extra 30 million a day to go into the NHS? Oh yeah, 40 new hospitals. Where are they? 6 of them are already in place. These 20,000 new coppers, are they presumably there to replace the 21,000 that got fired when he got into government? So we're still going to be 1,000 down. These 40,000, these how many thousand new nurses? Does that, new ones, does that include the 15 to 20,000 that are already in the NHS? You just look, and it's lies all the way across. And oh yeah, Rees-Mogg, where's he gone? So if you want a government that really hides from the tough questions, actually hides from any questions, or if they're likely to get questioned, sends their dad to the studio, or in Rees-Mogg's case, sends his nanny, yes, you did hear that right, his nanny, to go campaigning for him, yeah, vote Tory. But if you want a change, if you want somebody in government who might actually listen to what you think, don't vote Tory. Get them out. And oh yeah, one last thing before I go. There was a thing in the in the news a while ago, round about the time that last government's changed, about the Tories banging on and on and on about a letter that had been left by the previous Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Labour one, saying there's no money in it left, good luck. Well, that's a standing joke, actually. That's something that happens every time there's a change in government. That letter gets rewritten and left on the Chancellor's desk by the one who's leaving for the one who's coming back in. It's a tradition. So there really, there was money left, but it's something they always do. Yeah, only the Tories really make a meal of it. And anyway, why are they still blaming the last Labour government for their own shortcoming or for the things that are going wrong? They've been in power for 10 years. Coming to the end of their second term. End of the first term is when the statute of limitations runs out on that. After 5 years, it is down to the incompetence of the current government rather than the previous one. And I'll leave it at that, because I've got sick of ranting, and you've probably got sick of it as well. So, bye!